Hey guys, today it's time for my July wrap-up. This is actually gonna be a pre-Booktube-A-Thon wrap-up. I'm actually also filming this before Booktube-A-Thon because I've already read, I think, 8 books so far this month, and so I have decided to film this wrap-up now, and I will do a separate Booktube-A-Thon wrap-up, which at the time that this video will go up will already be up. I will include a clip of what I've read and the star rating of the books from Booktube-A-Thon, but if you want to hear my thoughts on these books, then you will have to check out my Booktube-A-Thon wrap-up. But we're gonna talk about the books that I read before Booktube-A-Thon, and as I said, it's quite a lot, so let's get into it. So first in July, I finished Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. I'm so happy that I finished this. I wasn't the biggest fan of Lady Midnight, and I wasn't really sure if I even wanted to continue with this series, but I thought I would give Lord of Shadows a chance because I don't enjoy the first books in Cassandra Clare's series for the most part. So I thought, okay, let's give the sequel another chance. If I couldn't get into it after a few hundred pages, because it does have like 700 pages, so I wanted to give it at least 300 pages, I thought then I'll drop it, and I drop everything, and I don't care about Cassandra Clare anymore. Well, I am happy to say, and I am really truly happy to say that, like, I was ready to let go, but it's not like I was like, oh, I don't want to read this anymore. I was just not ready to hold on to it just because of nostalgia. But I am so glad that I am able to hold on to it because I really liked Lord of Shadows. I actually gave it 4 out of 5 stars and I was really happy with it. It just was able to make me feel way more things. Even though I went into it pretty much not remembering anything about Lady Midnight at all, but I ended up just really appreciating every single character and just really having feelings, and I thought this was way less slow than Lady Midnight 2. Even Emma and Julian, which I wasn't a big fan of in the first book, they had some moments that I really appreciated in this one. Yeah, and I'm just really excited to see where this is going now, but I am also happy to say that I'm still not as invested as I was with the Mortal Instruments, which means it doesn't pain me as much as other people that we're only gonna get the sequel and the final one for this series in 2019. I can live with that. Then I finished Girls on the Side by Carrie Pack. I received this through NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. I didn't upload a video review for this because I just didn't feel like I was able to really put my thoughts out there. I think this book was a good idea. It's about, basically, it's historical fiction and plays in the 90s about a kind of riot girl group. And so I was kind of hoping that, even though it's historical fiction, a lot of people say like that white feminism is very accurate at that time. I wish that it's historical fiction. It's historical fiction. So I wish there had been some more intersectional feminism in it. It was very white and it did include some queer representation, everything. The thing is, I just don't think that any of the representation was done well, from what I can personally tell, being a queer woman, but also from what I've read from reviews by women of color, for example. I just don't think that any of the representation was done well. Sometimes there were problematic things, and even if they were challenged or, you know, questioned, it was still not done well. It also just wasn't really an enjoyable read because it was so much about like the white main character asking her black girlfriend like questions about racism the whole time, and they kind of got in fights, and it wasn't enjoyable. If you want to know like more thoughts on it, there's a bunch of Goodreads reviews that kind of really pinpoint the problematic things about it. I just wouldn't recommend it. There was no character growth in it. It had a kind of toxic relationship almost, and yeah, I just don't think it was a good book. I don't know, I am rocking my inner Hermione today, am I not? I mean, what the fuck is going on with my hair? Then I finished Walking on Knives by Maya Chabra. This is a novelette and it is a fairy tale retelling of Little Mermaid, an FF fairy tale retelling of Little Mermaid, and I actually did a full video review on that, so I would definitely advise you to watch that in case you're in general interested in retellings, because I really talk in detail about what I liked and didn't like about this one. I think it's an enjoyable read. There was just lots of stuff lacking. The writing wasn't done that well, and I just think that it was way too short to really bring across this kind of aspect, because the idea was really, really cool. Could have worked well if it was novella length, but I think for a novelette, it was just not very well done. I'm sad because there was a lot of potential in it, but it just wasn't really able to deliver it, and that's mostly because of the length, so that's a little annoying. I gave Walking on Knives 2.5 out of 5 stars. Then I listened to the audiobook of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I have to say, I enjoyed this a lot more than I originally did. I think I'm now old enough to appreciate the slowness of this book, because it has so much character growth in it, and that just really made me so happy. I think it was actually really nice that we kind of got to slow down and just be a normal teenager, you know? I actually really, really enjoyed that. And I think as far as my rating goes, I couldn't really rank this below Prisoner of Azkaban or Goblet of Fire. I think it's such an important, valid book in which we learn a lot of things, in which we really grow, in which we get amazing characters like Luna. I was always a big fan of Luna, but rereading this makes me so happy. I think Luna is such a great character. Next, I read The Siren by Kiera Cass. This book was a really, really horrible reading experience for me because I really enjoyed it. Like, I really enjoyed a huge chunk of it, but the end went into a completely just horrible, annoying direction for me. I think there was a lot of potential there, and the idea was really great. There was some really great family and friendship dynamics, and I think it was just a really interesting, unique story. There was insta-love in it, and I wasn't really bothered by it. I just don't think that the way the romance was handled was very well done if you look at the ending as well. I think, you know, there was so much focus on like family and friendship that the romance aspect of it really fell flat. But then at the end, it still is about the romance. And I'm just like, once again, I felt I felt the same way in the Air duology. Like, in the Selection trilogy, I feel like Kiera Cass just kind of completely ignores world building, and she's just like, this is a romance and we're gonna talk about this. And there's a little bit of action in it, but for the most part, she just focuses on the romance. And I felt like in the duology that was about Edelyn, she kind of all of a sudden tried to bring way more world building in there, and it just didn't work out because now there was not enough space for the romance. And it really sucked because the world building still wasn't well done, and the romance wasn't well done because there wasn't enough time for it. And I felt like it was the exact same way here. Like, the romance could have been really well done and could have been really amazing, but she decided to focus on something else instead. But then in the end, we still had to be invested in the romance to enjoy the ending of this book, and that just doesn't make any fucking sense to me. So I'm really annoyed because there was so much potential, and I'm just like, why? Why did you do this? I actually wrote a pretty detailed Goodreads review, so I'm gonna link that down in the description in case you're interested in more coherent thoughts on it. I honestly wouldn't recommend it because it's just very, very frustrating. Even though there's some really good aspects of it, I think in the end it's just frustrating. So I wouldn't really say it's a book I'd recommend. I gave The Siren 2.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Girl in 6E by A.R. Tor. This was the oldest book on my physical TBR, and I just had this kind of random thought of, I want to pick it up now, and so that's what I did. I ended up enjoying this so much. I was really surprised. This is like an erotic thriller, and the main character kind of has these urges to kill people, and that's why she works as a cam girl, and she hasn't left her home for several years. And so it's really interesting and very, very character driven, and I really wasn't expecting that. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense, but I just really wasn't expecting to kind of really appreciate the main character, Deanna, as much as I did. I mean, she is someone who constantly has thoughts about killing people in very violent ways, and I just found her so great, so interesting. I was really actually blown away by this book because it's kind of out of my comfort zone, and I ended up enjoying it so much that I actually want to continue with this trilogy, which going into this, I never thought I would, but I was just so invested in her storyline. There's also a romantic storyline in it, which I was not expecting, but really, really liked. And I just want to know where it's all going. I am really excited that I decided to read this because I almost thought of getting rid of it. You can absolutely read it as a standalone, by the way. I just feel so invested in the characters that I want to read more. Then I read All That She Can See by Carrie Hope Fletcher. This is one of my most anticipated releases of the year. I was a little bit disappointed, to be honest. I think the idea behind this is really good, and overall the book is very intriguing. I just think Carrie wanted to put so much stuff in this book. Like, you could really tell how she was just bursting with creativity and with ideas, and you can definitely tell that. I think that kind of led to it being all over the place. And I definitely thought it was an enjoyable reading experience overall. I think a good chunk of this book is really amazing. But at the end of this book, like, it's just like 70 pages left. It goes into a completely different direction. All of a sudden, it's like the beginning of a dystopian YA trilogy. It was still intriguing, but it wasn't intriguing as the last 70 pages of a standalone novel. If this actually ends up being a series, I think I would totally be down for it, because there's lots to explore in this world. But I just don't think that the length of this novel was enough to explain everything that was in here. I think there was a really good point in this novel where the kind of main problem was resolved, where the story could have ended. Then it might have only been like 280 pages, but it would have been a really good book with a really great conclusion. It just added something to it after that that I just thought was kind of unnecessary, and I think the message of the book was already clear at that point. As I said, it could have been interesting. There was just not enough time to establish that element, and so I ended up feeling super disappointed by it. As I said, I did enjoy a really huge chunk of this, and I wouldn't necessarily not recommend it. It has really cool, unique characters, and it's still a really cool idea and really unique idea. It has some diversity in it. The main character, Cherry, is actually black. Cherry also has two dads, so that's another diversity element in it, and I feel like just as in On the Other Side, it's really just done very well. I am really excited to see what some of my other booktube friends say about this. As I said, I still really appreciate the idea. I just think it could have been done better. And the final book that I read before Booktube-A-Thon was Blue Tide by Jenna Ling Duncan. This was also one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and I think this came out in February. I've been owning it since March. I've been wanting to read it. It finally happened. I finally read it. Also just kind of picked it up on a whim because I was in the mood for it. And I kind of went into this really expecting romance, because this is about a girl who is a refugee on this island, and she wants to go back to her homeland and kind of see what's left of it. And she gets kidnapped by pirates, and then she falls in love with one of these pirates. That's the very, very basic premise, and that's kind of the premise that's on the back of the book and on Goodreads. But I felt like it was a little bit misleading, because for me it sounded like it was historical fiction or like historical fantasy, and it's actually apocalyptic, basically. There's not too much world building on it, which is one of the things that I really did enjoy about this book. We kind of learn that there was this big flood and that a lot of countries are flooded. Like the US, for example, is completely flooded. There's nothing left of it. And that is why the main character Lux is a refugee. She fled from this big flood. This whole thing gets established way too late in the book. I think it took so long to understand where the story was set. Like, it took me so long to understand that the story was actually set like around our time. And so I just don't think that the world building aspect of it was done very well. Even though it was intriguing, I just think it should have been established way sooner. As far as the romance aspect goes, which I was looking for in this book, that was actually something that I really, really enjoyed. I think the love interest was my favorite character, and the whole romantic storyline was just absolutely my favorite part of this novel. And I actually found myself so invested in that romance. Like, I felt very emotional. In the second half of the book, kind of, I mean, a little bit similar to All That She Can See. This went into a completely different direction, and it just got really weird and really annoying, and there was another guy and there was some really dubious consent in it, which that's just really annoying, and I wasn't feeling it. Like, once again, I just felt like there was a good idea, but then the author tried to do too much, and then it wasn't enough pages to make all of that happen. I mean, this has just like a little over 300 pages. There was no way that all of this could have been established in this book. And I felt really sad because I was really into the romance, and then kind of just got stripped away from me, and this also ends in a way where there could potentially be a sequel, which is really annoying because I thought this was a standalone, but I'm really not sure now, and I am also too invested to say if there is a sequel, I won't read it. Like, if there is a sequel, I definitely want to read it. So I guess in the end, that is a good sign, but like, I gave Blue Tide 3 out of 5 stars. I did DNF one book that was Read Me Like a Book by Liz Kessler. I got this from the library, and I realized pretty quickly that I just couldn't really get into it. You know, I have it from the library, so someday I might return to it, but at the moment I just wasn't really feeling it. And this was everything that I read in July so far. I'm now gonna include everything that I read in Booktube-A-Thon, but as I said, if you want to hear my actual thoughts on it, you have to see my Booktube-A-Thon wrap-up, which will be linked in the description. And why is it so hard to figure it out? In the info card, I don't know. So, in Booktube-A-Thon 2017, I read Unconventional by Maggie Harcourt, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I listened to the audiobook of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I read The Winner's Curse by Marie Rudkowski, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. The Invention of Hugo Cabret, which I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars. The Tiger's Watch by Julia Ember, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. Behind the Song, edited by K.M. Walton, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. Traveler by L.E. Delano, which I gave 2 out of 5 stars. And finally, I finished Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. So this was everything that I read in July. Let me know how your July was. Are you having a great summer? Thank you so much for watching. I guess I'll see you soon. Bye!